Hello and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. I am Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And I'm Ricky Siegel, a certified sex therapist and supervisor.
And my brother, I am so glad to say and proud to be with.
Cheers to that, my
Cheers
awesome
to
big brother.
you. And cheers to you all. Thank you for joining us this and every Friday night. This is our traditional sake toast.
Fuji apple.
It's one of my favorites.
That's delicious.
I really like that.
Nice.
And again, normally I don't like sweet things, but this is just right.
We got to get an endorsement deal.
Yes.
Anybody knows anybody has a sake company?
That's right. Yep. We've been doing it every week, so we'd be happy to pour yours.
Yes. So welcome back. This is our time to talk sex, though. As we like to say, every day should be Sex
That's right.
Talk Day because we're a mess. We are a hot mess. We are... For a country that loves to brag about how it's the greatest country in the world, we just continue down this path of worsening sexual health. That is just, and I was talking to a fellow therapist this afternoon on a supervision call, that you and I must be masochists, because what else would explain 30 years of just being motivated by constant aggravation and frustration and just this outrage that why does nothing change? Why do we continue to be so stupid when it comes to our sexual health? Why are we so squirrely with the subject that we always say is the unified, what else is more universal than human beings all over the planet being sexual beings, and that we can't talk about it,
Right.
and we're a scared, skittish mess as a result.
And what's more
So
life
welcome to
affirming
our
than pleasure?
world, right? Well, why is
Right.
pleasure so terrifying?
That's right.
That's it. We are pleasure
That's right.
phobic.
Absolutely.
Which keeps us from being just plain realistic, right?
That's right. And the irony of the bragging that we like to do as Americans. We like to brag that we're number one, we're the best. But we do really kind of hold up the worst in so many of these kinds of problems. I mean, we've said this so many times in the past, that if there's anything that can go wrong with sex and sexuality, we pretty much lead the world.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking about unintended pregnancies, talking about sexually transmitted infections, sexual crime, violence, victimization, when you account for sort of per capita rates. Even in places where rape of both men and women is a way that tribal chiefs and governments keep, quote, order in their societies, we still got them beat. We still have a worse problem. Right? So, I mean, it really is, I think, to your specific question, let me just say that in our own defense, I'm going to pretty much put it out there that there is a definite line, although it's a very fine line sometimes, between persistence and stubbornness.
Yeah.
Right? And I like to err on the side of our being persistent in doing this work.
Yeah. Well, it takes persistence.
It does.
All of our fellow sexologists know this to be true. This is not a field for the faint of heart. I mean, even the broader field of psychotherapy and mental health is afraid of sex. And, another of our greatest hits, rants and raves, said, right, most, I'm going to say this slowly because I want people listening to really get this, the vast majority of marriage and family therapists have no training in sexuality.
No.
So, why do people get married and how did they come to have these families? Might have something to do with sex, but no, they don't talk about it.
Right.
Obstetricians,
gynecologists.
the only area of
Urologists.
medicine. Well, no, obstetrics holds a special place,
Yes.
right? Because it's the only
Yes.
area of medicine where it's not disease
Right.
that makes you a patient,
That's right.
right? It's sex is what makes you an obstetrics patient.
Right.
And yet, nobody talks about sex during pregnancy, around labor and delivery, after, except the old traditional goodbye and good luck, enjoy your baby, and no sex for 6 weeks.
Right.
And nobody talks about what that means. Nobody talks about maybe healing time, maybe taking intercourse off the table, but by all means, stay connected. Don't forget how you had that baby, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's so simple, but yet so far away from any reality.
It really is.
But let's talk about something happier, because it's the time of year.
But it also connects
Yeah,
to all of
it
that
sure
stuff.
does.
It really
Oh,
does.
it sure
This, you know,
does.
before we even start talking about what we're going to talk about tonight, let me make that little segue in there, because anything healthy regarding sex and sexuality, we don't do it here. Anything really positive regarding health, sex and sexuality, we don't do it here. If you can take advantage of it, exploit it, twist it in some way, that we're good at. Right?
Sure.
And I think
Commercialize
that
it.
kind of, and again, especially when you have the ability to commercialize it. Absolutely. If somebody can make money off of exploiting it, it's going to be done. And that, I think, brings us to our topic tonight, because it hits all of those notes.
It's that time of year, though it's hard to tell in South Florida. We don't generally feel very autumnal, but
That's right.
it's coming close to lots of people's favorite holiday at the end of October, Halloween. And as I'm sure we don't have to tell you, everybody seems to know that it's just been this increasing trend over the past several decades, probably, since the 70s, I'd say, of the, how would you describe it? This
The
increasing
sexualization,
slutification.
the slutification of
Right?
Halloween.
This whole thing about Halloween costumes being excuses for increasingly more just flagrant opportunity to slut it up, if that's not too judgy. I don't need to slut shame.
But I think it's
I don't
important.
want to get erased.
I think it's important to qualify that, though. Only for women.
Well,
Right? Pretty much only.
A lot of gay men really
no.
love
Well, I was
Halloween.
gonna. That was gonna be part of the history, right? In terms of tradition, I guess the '70s can be considered a time when traditions have started. It's another generation.
but this goes back, doesn't it?
It does. That's why, again, even the sort of male slutty part of that was much later in history. I mean, Halloween goes way back. More of a recent
it's
development.
always been about women having the opportunity to dress up as what they're not supposed to be, right? Like society
No,
ladies
but the
dressing up.
sexualization was kind of there, because there is a part of the history of Halloween that does connect to marriage and hoped for fertility. Right? So that's there's and just really out of my own curiosity, because it started with me asking myself the question. It's one thing to have this holiday, quote unquote holiday, that seems to be based on demons and the
Ghosts
dead
and goblins
and
ghouls.
zombies and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yet, how did a half-naked nurse end up as part of that picture? Right? And to my surprise, that is really sort of more part of the history than not. In fact, I read something, I think it was in Time magazine, an article that basically said that sex is really an older part of Halloween than trick-or-treat.
Wow.
Now, obviously, it has evolved a lot
Was it
over
like,
the centuries.
Costume balls and
Well, I mean,
those
there
sorts of
really
things?
was. I mean, there's a couple of things that we can look at. And, like most American celebrations, the true history is a bit murky. Right?
Like Valentine's Day, right?
Right, exactly.
We talked
Even
about that
Christmas,
a while ago. Yeah.
right? Even Christmas. We don't want to tell all of our Christian viewers that Christmas was really a pagan holiday.
Right. And you're not supposed to drag freaking trees in your house.
Right, exactly. That's in their Bible, right? But that's for another show.
Yeah. We'll wait till
But
the winter.
basically, I mean, this kind of goes way back, even before Catholicism. Goes back to even earlier than Middle Ages. It was a Celtic tradition, and I'm probably not going to pronounce this right, but I think Samhain was the name of their holiday, and it was kind of a time to honor the dead and welcome the spirits of your ancestors, but at the same time to be sort of a little naughty, if you will. There was something that came along with that about sort of inverting the social order. And surprisingly, I think when the Catholic Church first came into existence, they're responsible for a lot of things that Catholics don't like. right? Again, ironically. But then with the Catholic holidays of right around that time, like October 31st, All Saints Day, All Souls Day. Again, a lot of people don't realize these were Catholic holidays.
Wow.
And a number of things, number of behavior started to change. You did get boys especially, but even young men, cross-dressing. That became part of celebrating All Saints Day. And boys were supposed to be dressing up like virgins.
Interesting.
Right? And that was something that really started. In fact, part of, in a number of Catholic doctrines, there was something about the significance of this, particularly on October 31st, had to do with wise virgins waiting for their bridegroom to see if they will be married, and if they're going to be married, have fertility. So then there became this sort of Catholic undercurrent to Halloween that was about anticipating marriage and family. So it kind of went from ghosts and goblins to marriage and family. By the 19th century, right, talk about 1800s, Halloween was really seen as this kind of marking of sort of seeing if you're going to get married, right? Anticipatory marriage. But again, another one of these, yet despite part of the history, because we can also relate this, that became more popular even with the Catholic Church. Priests were even starting to recommend what one sociologist I read referred to as reverse rituals, which became...
Don't tell me they were dressing up little boys, altar boys, like little girls.
No. Well, yeah, already. They were already doing that. That's part of that dressing like a virgin. Boys were dressed to look like little girls. In some traditions, they would dress up to try to confuse the spirits, but it really became something about misbehaving in a public festival. Right? And that was actually endorsed by the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Right? And remember, they were big endorsers of abortion up until the early 1900s. I remember in the late 1800s, especially for poor women, the Catholic diocese, I think in New York, actually referred to it almost like a sacrament for poor women that could not afford to. But then politically in the early 1900s. So the Catholic Church was supporting a lot of these things way, way back in the day. So, it kind of became, sort of this venue for people to be publicly bad.
Yeah.
Right? And,
Taboo.
and that really was. So it became an opportunity for public flirting. These were the only opportunities that people really had to misbehave with permission, even from the priests, in public. Because they felt that there was so much pressure on society, and especially for Catholics, to be good Catholics, that even priests were behind the idea. One day of the year, go ahead.
Wow.
Go ahead, do what you want to do, act crazy,
Who knew?
Reverse traditions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Toast.
I will definitely toast to subverting social traditions.
What's that?
I
wouldn't even...
Samhain, I think is the way it's pronounced. It's Gaelic.
Okay.
Sorry, we're not Gaelic. But it became this sort of excuse for social transgression.
So subtle.
And escapism. Right? And that really began to...
So it really makes sense that these costumes just get so ridiculous.
It really did. Now,
like what were you saying earlier about Internet Meme 34?
Yes.
Right? Which for old 20th century guys like us, this is the earliest days of the Internet. I have no idea what 1 through 33 are.
That's right.
Never seen a list, but I remember this from like the late 90s, the mid 90s. Yeah. Internet Meme 34, right? That if somebody... If somebody thought of it, there's porn of it. Right. And wow, has that proven to be true. Exactly. Beyond anything any of us could have imagined over the past 20 years.
Well, now I will add on, not only if you can think of it, there's porn of it, but I'm also going to add, and there's a fetish community for it.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt, thanks to the internet, right?
That's right.
But let's boldly propose 35.
I will, but before we do,
Okay.
Let me just set the stage for Internet Rule, but we are now naming 35.
Okay.
Cut to the 1970s, right? Look at all those social forces that kind of came to a head. It became like a perfect storm. Civil rights and the
Women's
assertion
liberation.
of
Or the
personal liberties.
First crack at women's liberation.
Well, women's lib, actually, that was more like a third wave at that point in the 70s. That kind of me generation, the sexual revolution, and probably most influentially, gay rights. Right? Now, you put all that stuff together.
There's a party.
There's a party, absolutely. And gay Halloween parades. Right? And when I say gay, I mean gay Halloween parades.
Like precursors to pride parades.
Way precursors, absolutely. That's really, again, Carnival, Fantasy Fest, all of the gay pride parades. That really is what became the Halloween parades. Right? So, with that said, and we'll come back to that, Internet Rule 35, or just rule number 35. If there is a costume, there will be a slutty version for women. I don't care what it is, no matter what the costume is.
Yeah.
The old standbys, cowboys, firemen, police.
Even animals. Right?
Animals.
You want to be
You
a
wanna
dog?
be a dog?
You got to
Go
be a
ahead.
slutty, half-naked dog.
That's it.
I
That's it.
understand our producer is dressing up as a slutty Pikachu this year. So I'm really looking
Well,
forward.
but that's not dressing up. That's Thursday for him.
I'm
But,
looking
yeah, I
forward
mean,
to the pictures.
But you know what? They do have it. I mean,
Yeah.
they really do
I
have
know,
it.
yeah.
But see now, and that's one thing that I do want to point out as well, because again, for those of you who have children, especially for those of you who have daughters, this is something you should pay attention
And
to.
maybe have some conversations about, may we boldly suggest.
That's right.
Especially with the younger, the preteen set.
Exactly right. And when you look at costumes for boys and girls, they're similar for very, very young kids. Right? Very similar kinds of costumes. But once you start approaching adolescence, the costumes for boys and men remain the same. These are about characters. These are about becoming another individual, but it's still about being a person, even if it's dressed up as an animal.
Right.
But all
Like
the
Wolverine
versions
or a superhero.
for girls and women,
They have to be scantily clad.
again, spike heels,
Right.
fishnet stockings.
Slutty pirate,
right?
slutty nurse,
Yeah.
slutty librarian,
Slutty fill in the
slutty
blank.
spaceman, spacewoman.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, it has to have
Yes.
slutty in the front.
It does. That's Internet Rule 35 now.
Wow.
Right?
But yet Halloween doesn't have the same kind of sexy reputation as, say, Valentine's Day, where like couples anticipate that they're going to have a sexy evening.
Because I think Valentine's Day is more about leaning into it.
Yeah.
Halloween
And
is
showing
more
everybody
about
else.
this is different. This is my hidden self. Because Halloween, right, Valentine's Day, anybody can celebrate, but Halloween is a special day. Let's say you get the perfectly well-behaved, the very nice person doing everything that she's supposed to, the sober and correct third grade teacher, that now she can go out at night and be the biggest slut to have, do Jaeger bombs out of her belly button, go to this crazy, drunken bacchanalian type of Halloween parties, and it's all good. It's all acceptable. It's all okay. Because the expectation is tomorrow morning, you're back to being the good, sober, proper third grade teacher. So I think there is that accepted, I don't even know what the word would be. It's just, we accept the bad behavior.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I have a little concern over the fact that we have married these concepts so well. And of course, a lot of this is the marketing, of all of that. It's marketed this way as well. Once people decide they can make money on it, it goes to a whole nother level. But this, I think, the conflation of all of those forces: evil, scary, monster, female sexuality.
Oof. Are you talking
How
about
all
like,
of that stuff gets pulled into
Bram Stoker stuff?
It's very much,
right?
I think, is Bram Stoker stuff.
Vampires.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
A lot of fear of female sexuality and the succubus.
That's
right?
not only the succubus, but even
Suck out
even the
your
vampire,
soul.
the shadow. Right? And then you look at horror movies. The whole horror genre is a sexual morality tale.
Wow.
You always know in the beginning of a horror film who's going to die. Right? If they're having sex, they're going to die. And it's always the virgin who's left alive at the end. Right? And that's always been that whole genre was kind of developed as that sort of morality tale. So there is that sort of dark edge behind all of that stuff. So when, next time you're going for candy, and you're trick-or-treating, think about where some of this stuff comes from, right? And you know what I would love to see? Right? I would love to see the parents of all of those girls going out trick-or-treating, but instead of wearing a costume, how about don't? And go out on Halloween as a strong, self-sufficient girl. Right? How's that for a presentation? That would be nice. Right? I would give extra candy for that.
Huh. It's a nice thought. I don't know if it's going to sell.
No, it won't, and that's the problem.
Not out in the flyover states.
Right? That's the problem, because it does sell. And, the tail has been wagging the dog for a long time now. Demand does not drive production. Production now drives demand. And, of course, you get, all of these, talk about its own supply chain, the term everybody's been hearing about over the last year. You talk about this whole supply chain. All right, you buy a maid's outfit. Okay, well, now you have to accessorize. Got to get the fishnet stockings. Got to get that hat, you got to get that scarf, you got to get the whip, you got to get all this. And now all of a sudden a little costume is like an entire defining of a role.
And so the maid becomes the dominatrix.
Right.
I did read something that, there was something about that maid theme, right?
Yes.
Because maids weren't
Yes.
proper ladies.
That's right.
So proper ladies
Late
could dress
1800s.
up as maids.
Right. Exactly.
Right? And put on pantaloons and, right, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
so
right.
It's always class and privilege mixed in too.
It really is.
Sexuality.
It really is. Even again in the early 20th century and
no
even mid
escaping it.
19th century during slavery. I mean, how many? And it's not even slavery. Even when immigrants started coming over from Europe, and a lot of people were coming over as domestic help. Right? A lot of them were women of color. And the privileged white guys that were employing them would basically, and again, because if you were a working woman, you didn't have all of the layers. You couldn't afford all the clothing.
Right.
So aprons became something sexy because an apron actually represented undergarment.
Right.
So a lot of these, white employers
Interesting.
were sitting there watching their their housekeepers and
Frilly
watching it,
French
and
maid outfit. That's a Halloween
That's
cut.
a-
That's
it's a Halloween cut.
standard.
That's where it
right?
came from.
It has
Yes.
to be French. The
We've
frilly
sexualized
French
it.
maid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a archetype.
yes,
right?
it really is.
Wow.
Yeah,
Boy,
so-
you're a pretty deep guy. I didn't think we'd get this much out of this conversation, but I'm loving it.
It's Halloween. It's
Halloween.
rich with a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah, and just another example of how our just weird, screwy history and relationship with sex.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay if it's ritualized, but we go tickle, tickle, no. Right? Tantalize, use it to, as you said, exploit whatever, especially commercial enterprise, and then go, don't be disgusting. Right?
Yeah.
Our relationship with pleasure is still, and
That's our root.
yeah, I'm not going to go off on another tangent, but a discussion of pleasure always goes with a discussion of consent. And these are really the critical, important things that people just are still not talking about. Because we're not if we're pleasure phobic, then why in the world would we be talking about negotiating pleasure? No. Better just, get drunk, turn off the lights, just get it over with.
Right.
Like, what century are we in?
Right.
That people still approach sex
Well,
in this
we've
way.
never cut our ties to our puritanical roots.
Right. And let's toast and quote the late, great Robin Williams, who reminded us that this country was founded by people who were too uptight for Britain in the 17th century.
And let that kind of move around your palate a little bit. So I think on that note, I thank you for another
thank you,
another
my Duke,
week.
my awesome big brother.
And thank you all for tuning in. And please join us every Friday night at 7 o'clock for a new episode.
Yeah, we'll be back next week before Halloween, but just maybe we gave you something to think about while you're picking out your costume this week.
Yeah, that's right. We want to do that
Shopping
beforehand.
for your accoutrement.
Exactly.
Make it nice and sexy, but keep it classy.
That's right. That's right.
And we should apologize to all of the self-proclaimed self-loving sluts if we've stomped too undaintily on the use of the word in tonight's discussion.
Yes, and I hope not, and I hope you realize that we were just applying that to the insincere sluts. Right? The ones who are just posers.
Yes.
Okay. So please, if you would, hit that like button, subscribe, help us grow, continue to have some of these kinds of conversations. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what questions you may have. So please contact
comments
us.
and questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, thank you. Stay safe. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us each week on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of the latest developments in the ever-changing world of sex and sexuality.